We want to take you now to Pennsylvania, where officials are giving an update on a person of interest in the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
In the New York City shooting in recent days. That male was asked for a form of identification. He then provided a fake identification card out of New Jersey. After a brief investigation, it was determined that the ID provided was in fact a fake ID, and he was subsequently arrested for a forgery charge. Once he was taken into custody for that forgery charge, he was transported to the Altoona Police Department. Once at the Altoona Police Department, that male was searched instant to arrest. It was discovered that he had a United States passport that identified him as, Luigi Mangione. From there, continued search of his property. A firearm was located, and a suppressor was also located. There were also other items of evidentiary value that were located that would assist in this investigation. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Governor Shapiro for some words.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Swope, and let me acknowledge and thank the law enforcement who I'm joined with today, beginning with Lieutenant Colonel Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police. I want to thank Senior Special Supervisory Agent Szabo from the FBI, and acknowledge NYPD Commissioner Daughtry and the women and men of the NYPD who join us here today, District Attorney Weeks, who you will hear from shortly. And I just concluded a briefing with Mayor Adams and Commissioner Tisch from New York. I want to begin by thanking our fellow Pennsylvania resident who acted as a hero today. Pennsylvania resident saw something early this morning at McDonald's and said something to our local police. And our local police here in Altoona acted swiftly. I want to say a special thanks to Officer Tyler Fry of the Altoona Police Department. Officer Fry is about 6 months into his time serving his fellow people here in Pennsylvania, and he acted swiftly, he acted with smarts, and he acted with calm. You know, safety often turns on the strength of the relationship between the community and law enforcement. We have that strong relationship here in Altoona, and it was proven here today. I want to ask all of our fellow Pennsylvanians to demonstrate the same type of thoughtfulness and courage and smarts as the individual at McDonald's did this morning, and help law enforcement here in Pennsylvania as we continue with our investigation. You'll see photos of the suspect who is here. And you should know that this suspect traveled between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, making stops in between, obviously here in Altoona. I want to ask all of our fellow Pennsylvanians to help us with any tips that they might have by contacting us at 800-4-PA-TIPS. Again, that number is 800-4-PA-TIPS. The suspect was just arraigned here in the courthouse, and presumably New York will file charges very, very soon. That process will continue to play out, and justice will be delivered in this case. This case is hinged on attention. In fact, the attention in this case and the killing of Brian Thompson was helpful, no doubt, in allowing us to capture this killer, in alerting that individual at McDonald's this morning, and then having that individual contact police. But some attention in this case, especially online, has been deeply disturbing, as some have looked to celebrate instead of condemning this killer. Brian Thompson was a father to two. He was a husband, and he was a friend to many. And yes, he was the CEO of a health insurance company. In America, we do not kill people in cold blood to resolve policy differences or express a viewpoint. I understand people have real frustration with our healthcare system, and I have worked to address that throughout my career. But I have no tolerance, nor should anyone, for one man using an illegal ghost gun to murder someone because he thinks his opinion matters most. In a civil society, we are all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero. The real hero in this story is the person who called 911 at McDonald's this morning. The real heroes every day in our society are the women and men who put on uniforms like these and go out in our communities to keep us safe. This killer was not a hero. He should not be hailed. Mr. Thompson, I understand, was laid to rest earlier today in Minnesota in a private setting. As the conversation continues about this case, let's be mindful not to dehumanize him and make him just an avatar of a system that is disliked by many. He was a father, he was a husband, and he did not deserve to die like this on a sidewalk in New York City. I again want to thank all law enforcement who's present here this evening. Law enforcement works best when it works together. In this case, you have the New York Police Department working together with the Altoona Police Department, working together with our Pennsylvania State Police and our partners at the federal level as well. Everyone came together to solve this case and keep the public safe. I again want to ask my fellow Pennsylvanians, if you have any information regarding this suspect or his travels throughout Pennsylvania, please share those tips with us immediately. And with that, I want to thank District Attorney Weeks for his important work today and invite him to the microphone to say a few words.
Thank you, Governor Shapiro. Good evening, everyone. I would echo the governor's sentiments. Law enforcement does work at its best when they work together. I'd also like to thank District Attorney Seidel. He and his staff came down from the Manhattan District Attorney's office today in record time to assist us at the Altoona Police Department. And as the governor stated, the state police, the Altoona Police Department, the FBI, the New York City Police Department, Logan Township Police Department, the Blair County Sheriff's Department, and other agencies all worked together today to do what needed to be done to seek justice. I often brag about how the community in Blair County isn't afraid to say something, to report a crime, to contact local law enforcement. And I've often touted how they've made their community, whether it be Altoona or somewhere else, a safer place to live. And today I submit that a resident from Altoona and the Altoona Police Department helped make New York City a safer place to live and helped kickstart the process to seek justice for a senseless killing. So again, I'd like to thank everybody, and it's my honor to introduce Deputy Commissioner Daugherty at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DA. On behalf of the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, my boss, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, wants to extend once again their appreciation to the Altoona Police Department, to your leadership team, the federals, state, local authorities, and especially to the customer at the McDonald's that seen something, said something to the McDonald's employee that called 911 and reported this individual inside of their restaurant. The men and women behind me, the detectives, Some of these detectives that are standing behind me haven't been home since Tuesday when this incident happened. They've been working this case tirelessly around the clock. And when they got that phone call, immediately they jumped in their car, to the police car, and raced down here to go see if this was the individual that we're looking for. That's dedication. Their commitment to bringing this individual to justice is just standing behind me. And on behalf of the mayor and the police commissioner, they extend their thanks and appreciation to you as well. Here's a message to the criminal element that think that they want to commit a crime in New York City and cross state lines, county lines. The message is very clear. Police Commissioner Tisch's police department will find you and bring you to justice. Just look behind me. Thank you.
I think with that, we'll be happy to try and take a few questions.
Question, I guess maybe for the local enforcement about the arrest specifically today. I don't know who.
We'll defer to Altoona, please.
I guess I'm curious if we could hear a little bit more about the dynamics. If you could set the podium there. Sure. We could hear a little bit more about the dynamics inside that McDonald's. I know there was some detail in the affidavit about what happened when the individual was asked if he's been to New York. Could you speak a little bit to his demeanor and how that played out?
Sure. So it was a peaceful arrest, first and foremost. The officer quickly recognized the male as the suspect from the shooting. And within several minutes, seconds of the first contact, he had asked the suspect if he had been in New York City recently. And that really invoked a physical reaction from the suspect. He became visibly nervous, kind of shaking at that question, and he didn't really answer it directly. So that statement alone really said a lot, and the suspect didn't have to say a lot after that question to show that, you know, he was very nervous at that point.
Was that the officer that the governor mentioned who's new on the job, who was involved in that?
Yes, so Officer Fry's here to my left. Officer Fry, you step this way a little bit. And then his partner that he was with, Officer Joe Detweiler.
Officer, could you maybe identify yourself and maybe describe that whole interaction and what played out? Spell your name.
Yeah, Patrolman Fry, Tylerfrye. So whenever we got on scene there, we were able to pretty much find where he was at in the restaurant. And as soon as he was wearing a blue medical mask. As soon as we pulled that down, or we asked him to pull it down, me and my partner and I recognized him immediately, just from what we saw in the media with photos, videos. We just didn't even think twice about it. We knew that was our guy, but he was very cooperative with us. Didn't really give us too many issues. Once we found out his identity, we took it from there.
How did it feel with 6 months on the job as a law enforcement officer to be part of?
I can't say I was expecting it by any means, but it feels good to get a guy like that off the street, especially starting my career this way. It feels great.
So upon his arrest, has he made any statements since his arrest? Has he asked for a lawyer yet?
To my knowledge, he hasn't made any statements.
How long was he staying in Altoona, and where was he staying, and then was the gun on himself, or was it in like a car somewhere?
We are still investigating how long he's been in Altoona. There's still a lot of follow-up to do in this case. Again, the men and women behind me are assisting with that. So we're still looking into it.
I'm going to ask Lieutenant Colonel Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police to address the question you just raised.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So there are a lot of things that need to be followed up yet in this investigation. Certainly, there were a number of items that were found on his person, in his backpack, that have been inventoried, and we've begun to do an analysis of some of those. There were written documents. There are electronic devices that are in the process of being downloaded. Search warrants are obtained. And so over the next hours and days, those efforts will continue, and we're going to take a closer look at all of the information that we can glean from that regarding his activities up until and during the time of the homicide, his flight from New York, and we know that he has been in Pennsylvania, excuse me, for several days. And so part of that investigation will also focus on trying to retrace his steps. We've already identified businesses, for example, that he frequented in this area and activities that he engaged in. That led us to more evidence. And so all of that is becoming kind of a mountain of evidence that has to be analyzed and looked at. I'm confident we'll have a much better idea of his activities over the past number of days in New York and in Pennsylvania. Additionally, we're also trying to determine that we don't have another actor or an accomplice out there. And so this information will all be used to help us prove or disprove whether that exists and whether there were any other intended targets. So a lot of questions that are out there that are unanswered yet, but we have a lot of information that we can examine that hopefully will give us some of those pieces of data that we need. You asked, or someone asked about the interview. He was initially cooperative. He is not now. And so he has been arraigned and transported and will be securely housed pending the filing of additional charges in New York.
Governor Shapiro, you mentioned that he was in Pittsburgh at some point. Is that correct? What
Yes.
do you know about that time in Pittsburgh?
We're not going to get into any more details at this time. We would like to hear from any Pennsylvanian or any Pittsburgher who had any sightings or any dealings with the individual. That's why I specifically asked for anyone with tips to share that with us.
Can you talk about the extradition to New York? How does that process work? I know that you have your piece here, but what happens with the New York part of it?
And how long does it take?
Thank you.
So that answer depends. Once the charging documents are filed in the state of New York, we will file a fugitive justice complaint against the defendant. He'll be brought before a common pleas judge shortly thereafter, and the defendant will be presented with the option to waive his extradition or to contest his extradition. If he waives his extradition, we of course will make him available to the NYPD and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as soon as we're able to arrange his transportation there. If he contests it, that process typically takes between 30 and 45 days to do the requisite paperwork, but we do that all the time in our office, and that's kind of a normal procedure.
On the matter of the backpack itself right now, the backpack itself, you had the one that was in New York. Do we know if that's the same one that he had the time of the shooting there, or is this backpack that he had here one that he may have acquired? And the findings inside, the gun, the silencer, and cash, some foreign currency as well, is that correct?
I'll defer to someone else. I'm not going to speculate on any of the interpretation of the evidence. I'm going to rely on the officers doing the investigation to complete that and reach their conclusions.
Can we say that at this point he is a suspect in the hit on the United CEO? Can we call him a suspect at this point? Obviously, he's rushing on.
Yes, as we confirmed at his preliminary arraignment, with the permission of District Attorney Seidel, we expect charges to be filed forthwith. And obviously, that I'm not going to speculate on that timing, but tonight or tomorrow or sometime in the very near future for homicide.
Any insight into a motive?
Just to clarify one quick.
Sorry, sir, can I just ask? In terms of the officers investigating this case, can you say any more about a suspected possible motive?
So at this point, we're not going to comment on that. I mentioned that there is a lot of information to go through. Certainly everything has been or will be shared with NYPD, but there is other information that really doesn't even pertain to that investigation. It, again, focuses more on his activities here in Pennsylvania and other travels. So all of that hopefully will shine more light on it. There is some information that gives us some insight into his thinking, but again, all part of the ongoing investigation, and way too early to discuss that.
Commissioner?
As far as the NYPD, we're not going to be commenting on the investigation steps here. In the next couple of days, there'll be immediate availability at One Police Plaza, and Commissioner Tisch will update. Commissioner Tisch and the Chief of Detectives, Joe Kinney, will update the media at One Police Plaza. But I will be happy to talk about that. The Commissioner Tisch and the New York City Mayor did FaceTime Officer Fry and then thanked them for their service. So that was he got a pretty cool phone call from the mayor and our police commissioner.
Do we know how he got to Pennsylvania? Was it through aircraft, train, bus? How did he arrive in Pennsylvania?
Again, we do have a good idea of that, but all part of the ongoing investigation.
But just to clarify, Governor, you had suggested, I think I heard you, I want to make sure I heard it right, that he, I guess he took a bus from the terminal at the George Washington Bridge to Philly, and then from there he was around the state, around up here, or is that your, can you be any more specific about how you think this works?
Well, again, I'll jump in, as it's all part of the ongoing investigation. And so, yes, we do have a good idea how he got from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, but there are some gaps in time. And so before we start laying out a timeline of his travel, we really need to work through all of that. And so we know that at some point it is likely he was in a variety of locations across the state, to include Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and points in between.
And then Altoona, so Philadelphia, then Pittsburgh, and then he made his way back here.
Again, that'll all be part of the, logically, he's caught here in Altoona, so logically he was in those locations first. But again, the timeline of all of that will be part of the ongoing investigation.
What was happening evasive action for several days? Obviously, he was caught at McDonald's this morning. Guy's got to eat. For the past few days, he's been on the run for multiple days at this point. How did he manage to evade detection for so long?
So I think, again, as part of the ongoing investigation, when we determine where he's been, where he stayed, those kinds of things, we may be able to answer some of those questions. But right now I will tell you that based on everything that we have seen, he was very careful with trying to stay low profile, avoid cameras, not all that successfully in some cases, but that was certainly the effort he was making. He took steps to try and, avoid detection with some of the electronic devices and things as well. So again, all part of the investigation, but clearly, somebody that was very security conscious and trying to avoid someone
identifying.
identifying.
He has no criminal record, and this was a name that was not previously known to law enforcement?
I am not aware of a criminal history on this
Could you
individual.
speak to those tech,
Can you please elaborate on the
tech
cash?
evasion devices? It was mentioned in the hearing, and then the defendant said that those were waterproof in bags. Could you speak a little bit more to what was taken into evidence today?
No, not at this point. Again, I've spoken generally about what's there, but at this point, everything remains under investigation, and we'll have much more information, and New York will certainly have information for you in the future.
How confident are you this is the suspect? Is there still a search for any other suspects other than the accomplice or potential accomplice?
We're still going to canvass. We're still going to investigate. Like I said before, we're going to provide an update in a couple of days by the police commissioner and the chief of detectives back at New York. I will say this, though, if anybody out there that has any information that they think that will help this case, to please contact our tip line, which is 1-800-577-TIPS. And remember, all calls are kept confidential.
Just to clarify, the customer spoke with the employee called 911.
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
Was it a customer that recognized the suspect first, told the employee, and the employee rang police? Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding, I was just confirming, but my understanding is the employee became suspicious, thought they recognized, and wanted someone to check it out further.
Because someone referred to a customer.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, did I say the employee? The customer recognized, notified an employee, and wanted someone to check it out further.
Can you confirm which restaurant it was? Was it the one on Plank Road?
I'm not familiar with the address of that. It's a McDonald's, but yes, they tell me it is.
The suspect disputed the currency. Can you explain why there might be discrepancy or how much he was found to have?
Again, we're not going to talk about what was found in the bag. We have accurately cataloged everything that was in there, and that'll be a matter for the future.
DA Weeks, could you repeat what you said in court about that money?
I certainly stand by all the comments I made at the preliminary arraignment, but I'm not going to comment any more on the evidence at this time. My comments at preliminary arraignment were in support of my argument for bail. Thank you.
We probably have time for one or two more questions. Is he being held at a county or state facility?
He will likely be taken to a state correctional institution later this evening.
Can I just say specifically for Pennsylvania,
violence can never be used to address political differences or to address a substantive difference or to try and prove some ideological point. That is not what we do in a civilized society. That was true in Butler. It was true in New York City. And it's true anywhere. That is not how you make progress in this country. The person, the suspect here, who shot at that CEO and killed that CEO is a coward, not a hero. And we need to make sure that in this country, we get back to having a civil discourse about our differences. And that is an important lesson coming out of Pennsylvania, and it is one that I think the rest of the nation needs to hear as well. On a law enforcement side, I will tell you that I am incredibly proud of the Pennsylvania State Police and local police in Butler and here in Altoona, who responded in a way that kept others safe and saved other lives. That was true at the fairgrounds in Butler, and it was true here today in Altoona. Had that local Pennsylvanian not spoken up, had that wonderful police officer who's been on this job for 6 months not acted calmly and swiftly, God knows what could have happened. So I think the lessons coming out of Pennsylvania are that violence is not a way to answer questions and address problems, and that we have the gift of law enforcement here in this Commonwealth who care deeply about the safety and well-being of our fellow Pennsylvanians and our fellow Americans, and I commend them for that.
Thank you all.
We've been watching officials give an update on the killing of the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. This briefing is in Pennsylvania, the killing happening in Manhattan. Officers, this is the new information that we're learning today in terms of the apprehension of the person of interest, Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, who was apprehended in a local McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania today. An employee is the one who called local police, seeing someone who they recognized from the pictures that police and the media have been putting out. Officers approached him, asked him to pull down his surgical mask, and recognized him as the man being sought in the killing of Brian Thompson. They say he showed a fake New Jersey ID, the same one he used to check in to the New York City hostel prior to the killing. It's a fake New Jersey ID. When asked if he had recently traveled to New York, they say he became visibly nervous and started shaking. Officials also saying this is video of him from his valedictorian speech at a boarding school, I believe high school. Police also say he traveled from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, making stops in between, including in Altoona, and that while he spent several days in Pennsylvania, it's unclear how long he's been in Altoona. They say he was cooperative but is no longer, and that New York will file homicide charges soon, and he'll be taken to a state correctional institution this evening.